Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today's kind of like a question for gamers that I typically like to do every once in a while, just to throw out some questions, just to get a conversation going. And this one, I think it comes up quite a bit, especially amongst the gaming community, and that is, are video games too expensive? Now, right off the bat, you're probably wondering, well, what is he talking about? Are you talking about new video games? He's talking about classic video games, collecting video games? Because there's a whole lot of ways you could play video games. Collecting, you could become a collector. You could go after the rare stuff, or you could just be talking about brand new games right off the shelf. And every one of them has kind of their own thing. So let's start off with, say, classic gaming, because that's typically what I do. I do a lot of old stuff. I'm trying to get into some of the newer stuff, but I've always been kind of into the old stuff, the stuff that I grew up with when I was a kid, when I played on my Intellivision, like when I got an Atari, things like that. And back then, I mean, obviously the market was different, the economy was different. You still paid a lot of money though to buy a brand new game. So, I mean, part of the whole reason why the whole crash happened was there was so much stuff out there, and video games were just expensive on their own, and people were getting a lot of crap, and they were probably paying a lot of money, like, good chunk of change to get crap titles. Now, I'm not going to say that that's the main reason for the crash. There's many reasons for the crash, but the North American crash, I should say, because it only really happened in North America. But the price did, I think, have a lot to do with it. And now, obviously, when I was a kid, it didn't really affect me too much because I wasn't the one going out and buying them. I was, asking my parents to buy them, or I was getting them for birthday presents, Christmas presents, borrowing off friends. But as I started to get older and I started to get into actually like buying up a lot of the classic games that I used to play, in the beginning, when I first started, actually, was a lot of games were really cheap, and I'm talking like Atari, the NES, and even to some degree Sega, and I was buying them for really cheap amounts. But then prices started to go up. People started to want to collect this vintage stuff or the old stuff, and then prices skyrocketed. Some people blame the internet. They blame they blame YouTubers for hyping products. They blame people like the Angry Video Game Nerd, Metal Jesus Rocks, a lot of the big YouTube channels out there, which I don't believe in that at all. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think it's just people want their nostalgia. And yeah, there was certain titles that would get hyped. One of them I'm going to talk about here is I've shown this off a few times. This is my advanced Dungeons and Dragons for the Intellivision. And the reason why I'm showing this off is because I have a price sticker on there. $7.50. Now, you're probably saying, well, that's damn cheap. Yes, it is. This is an Intellivision game. Most of these games were cheap after market, after the whole market thing, when they were used. I was buying Intellivision cartridges and the games complete in box for like hardly anything. And this one store that I went into, he had a bunch of Intellivision games, and he had this one for $7.50, where he had the rest of them for like I think under $4. And I said, how come this one's more expensive? And he said, well, this is Dungeons and Dragons, so that makes it more expensive. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. But then, as I think about it, that's kind of what does drive prices, is something like a name brand or something. He probably had no idea what the game was about. He probably never played the game before. He's just going on the fact that it was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, so he raised the price. And I think that's what happened to a lot of things. They look at it, they say, well, this is a popular name, I'm going to raise the price. And it probably did that to the whole market. So whenever you walked into a flea market or anywhere where you could pick up these old games, people would just kind of go by the name and just be like, well, this is a popular title. I'm going to boost the price up $10, $15 more than what it probably should be selling at. And I guess that worked. But also, you have to take into account that there was a lot of games like this one, Thunder Castle, which came out really late in the life cycle of the Intellivision. And so copies were not readily available all over the place. And so for me to pick this one up, I had to pay about 40. And that's a lot. That's a lot of money for an Intellivision game. In my books, anyways. I know there's some that are probably going to go for more. But this one, I mean, I went out on a limb. I was excited about the look of it. And I thought, that's really cool. You know, it's got the new sticker on there and everything. And so I sourced it out on eBay and I picked up a copy of it because I kind of liked it. And yeah, I ended up paying $40 for an old Intellivision game. But it's rare, and it makes sense for it to be expensive. This doesn't. This is not that rare. A lot of people had this. I had this when I was a kid. So it just kind of makes you wonder where the pricing comes from. And then obviously there's things like on the Atari, and I've shown this one off on a previous video. This is Miner 2049 or Volume 2. I don't think they made a lot of this one, probably because the series wasn't successful on the Atari or something like that. The first one, Volume 1, they made a lot of, and the price is a lot cheaper. But this goes for quite a bit of money. I haven't sourced it out in a while, but I've been told it actually goes for a lot of money. And that makes sense. There's a rarity. It's not readily available, so let's, you know, jack the price up if you can actually find a copy of it. And I'm sure if you can get one in the box and manual, it probably brings the price up even higher. And then you can go into like Nintendo games like, you know, Link, the Legend of Zelda, The Adventure of Link. You know, these are really hot titles. So probably people would have these in their showcase and probably boost the price up because they know people love Zelda. Even to some extent, the original Castlevania games. These are just some examples of you know, Nintendo games I just kind of had sitting out here. But, you know, like, certain titles just go for crazy amounts of money. And some of it could be hype, and some of it could be rarity. Moving on, though, let's talk about modern gaming. Recently, well, you know, not that far in the past, I finally picked up a Switch. Now, I even did a video on that, because to me, spending that kind of money on a video game system seemed kind of crazy. But it was eating at me. I haven't had a brand new system in a long time. The Nintendo Wii was my last system, as far as the latest system, and that was many years ago. And I thought I need to pick up something new. I need something fresh. I've been playing old stuff for a very long time. But one thing that scared me was the price of the games. And the games specifically that I wanted, mainly this one, Zelda, Breath of the Wild. I mean, I'm a big Zelda fan. I loved the first few Zeldas that came out. And so naturally I had to have this. But at a pretty good cost. I mean, this was like $70 plus tax. I'm talking Canadian money here. It's not American, so I don't know what it goes for in America. You know, I haven't looked it up. But here in Canada, I was paying like $70 plus tax. So you can imagine when I had to buy my Switch, which was about $390 or I think I got it for $379, somewhere in there. Then I had to throw in another $70 just to get Zelda. And the thing I learned is that I could download it online, but it's the same price. So whether I get the physical copy, and then I get a card and, you know, all that stuff, and there's nothing in there either. That's what it came with. I ended up getting actually the box around it, and it came with an extra manual. But I mean, if you just bought it off the shelf regularly, you paid that same price. I also ended up picking up this one, mainly because I thought it would be more fun for my daughter. And this one was also regular price, $70. They just happened to be having a Mario Brothers sale on at the time, so it was like, you know, $50 I think I paid. But even then I thought, I'm paying a lot of money for these games, and should I just hold out? Are they going to drop in price one day? I don't know. And, you know, I kind of said that with my Wii. When I bought the Wii, and the Mario Brother game came out with it, well, Mario Brothers Wii, or whatever it was called, that was out, and I didn't want to spend that kind of money. It was like $60, $70 for a game. And I thought, that's insane. That's a lot of money. Why do I want to pay that kind of money? Perhaps I just got used to all these retro games and paying like, you know, $10, $20 for a game. versus going out and buying one brand new off the shelf for that kind of money. It's a lot. I seriously did not contemplate spending that kind of money. But I did. And so far, and I've had my Switch now for a while, these are the two games that I purchased for that kind of money. I ended up buying, a few other games, but very small games for like $30. And even then, I'm like, okay, well, $30 is still a lot, but that's a lot better than $70. And, occasionally I go into, like, say, Walmart and Toys R Us or wherever I go into, and I see the games. I look at, like, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and I look at the prices, and I'm like, is it me, or are these prices insane? Is there a reason why they're so expensive? I kind of get it. It does take a lot now. I mean, if you compare it to the old games where they had one programmer, maybe a one sound person who created the music, and that was it. They had two people who would make one game. Whereas, like, modern games, it's tons of people. They have credits, like, rolling off the screen like a movie. And so it kind of makes sense today. But if you think about going back to the 80s and 90s when they made these older games, the prices were also $50, $60, $70 brand new. So it really didn't matter. I mean, in the end, it's still the same. It's still a lot of money. Another thing I guess, last thing I want to kind of throw out there is homebrews. And I know I had a small discussion. I can't remember who I was talking with now. It was on one of my videos, I think. They were talking about the price of homebrews. If you don't know what a homebrew is essentially a modern game or a game made today to work on the older systems. Oftentimes it would be Atari, Nintendo, whatever. So they're still bringing these games to life, the systems to life by making newer games. And the problem is that, yeah, they're going to need money for that. They're going to charge $40, $50, $60 for a game that they created to play on an old system. And we'll say, well, why would I spend that kind of money for a Nintendo game or for an Intellivision game or an Atari game? Why would I spend that kind of money? But it does make sense because you're talking about a small team, a small developers, people using their own money, their own, they're not big, huge corporations. They're not Sony. They're not Nintendo. It makes sense when you need to, spend that kind of money for something that's being pretty much handmade and delivered. So I kind of understand that. But at the same time, people start to think, well, is it worth spending that kind of money? And of course, there is emulation out there. So that's kind of like the driving factor right there. Do I emulate? Do I essentially get the ROM? Which there is, you're drawing the line here now. It's like, am I stealing? Is it piracy? All that kind of stuff starts to come out if I'm taking ROMs and I'm just using the ROMs. Technically you're not supposed to use ROMs unless you own the game itself. And just to end this off, things like this exist. Flashback systems. I could buy this. I got 105 Atari games. This is the 8. There's the 9 that came out. But even these are expensive. This one, I have the price tag still on that I paid. $49.90. What is it? $49.99. So that's $50 plus tax. Just to play some old Atari games that I already probably own. What's the other system? There was the PlayStation Classic that came out. There was the NES Classic, the SNES Classic, and they're all pretty expensive. Even the Flashback Atari 9, the latest one, is about $100 on the shelf in Canada, here where I shop anyways. Maybe in America it's different. Anyways, yeah, I know this was like a long-winded video, but I just wanted to talk about video game prices and what your thoughts are. Throw some comments down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think drives the prices? Do you think they're fair? Do you think it's fair spending $70 for Wii, Switch, I mean, anything modern? Is it worth the money you're spending? And does the value keep? All that kind of fun stuff. Throw it down below. Even if it has to do with retro gaming, it's all good. Throw it all down below. Let's talk about it. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Hope you subscribe to my channel. Talk to you later.